She was told, "You can't board with a child." But when the agent read the birth certificate, the entire gate fell silent. What they discovered changed 3 lives forever. She stood at gate 17 like someone who had just crossed time itself. Hair silver as moonlight, coat neatly pressed, hands trembling just enough to reveal the storm inside her. And in her arms, a little girl, barely 4 years old. Blonde curls, red shoes, holding a stuffed bear by the ear. Helen looked down at the child. "It's okay, sweetheart. We'll be on that plane soon," she whispered, voice cracking around the words like glass around a soft flame. But then came the voice. Firm, procedural, unmoved. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. You can't board with a child under this ticket." The TSA agent held out a hand, palm up, demanding explanation. "She's not listed here. You need proper documentation, and this doesn't look right." Passengers in the boarding area glanced over, some with curiosity, some with suspicion. Helen reached into her handbag, fingers fumbling past tissues, a photograph, a small bottle of lavender oil. Finally, she pulled out a folded paper. "Please, just look at the birth certificate," she said. The agent took it, opened it, and then something changed. His brow furrowed, then lifted, then dropped again, slow and unsure. His lips parted like he might speak, but he didn't. Not right away, because on that document was a name. A name that didn't fit, a name that made no sense. Yet somehow, made everything make sense. Behind Helen, Lily tugged at her coat. "Nana, are we going on the airplane now?" The silence at gate 17 thickened, like air before a summer storm. And that was the moment when the crowd stopped whispering, when the agent stepped back, when everyone looked again, not at the child, but at the woman who held her, and wondered, who was she? Really? 6 hours earlier, the morning light crept softly across the lace curtains in Helen's modest home, just outside of Cincinnati. The clock on the wall ticked like a heartbeat, steady and slow. On the coffee table, 2 boarding passes rested beside a small, worn teddy bear and a bottle of children's cough syrup. Helen, 72, stood at the stove stirring oatmeal, the sleeves of her cream sweater pushed up to her elbows. Her hands moved with care, but her mind wandered far from the kitchen. In the armchair near the window sat little Lily, swinging her legs and coloring quietly. Her blonde curls caught the morning sun like strands of gold. "Almost ready, sweetheart," Helen said gently. "Just a few more bites before we go to the airport, okay?" Lily nodded, not looking up. She was a quiet child, observant, gentle, older than her years in some mysterious way. Helen had only known her for 4 days, and yet she felt like she'd known her forever. The phone rang. Helen didn't answer. She didn't need to. She knew who it would be and what they would say. Warnings, doubts, questions she had no good answers for. Instead, she picked up a photograph from the counter. A younger woman smiled back, brunette hair, tired eyes, holding Lily in her arms. Emily. The daughter Helen hadn't seen since the day she was born. That photo had come in an envelope 3 weeks ago. No return address, just a single page inside, handwritten in nervous script. "Dear Helen, I'm not asking for forgiveness, just help. Her name is Lily. She needs someone safe. I hope you still believe in second chances." Helen had stared at that letter for hours. She had thought she'd imagined it. She had waited her whole life for that kind of message, but never expected it to come like this. So late, so raw. Now, as she watched Lily stir her oatmeal with tiny, distracted circles, she felt the weight of every year, every unanswered question, every moment she'd missed. Outside, a light drizzle began to patter against the windows. Helen knelt beside the child. "Do you remember what we said? About the airport? About the plane?" Lily looked up. "You said we're going to a place where the trees are red." "That's right." Helen smiled softly. "We'll see them together." She helped Lily into her coat, zipped it up carefully, and packed a tiny pink backpack with snacks, crayons, and the stuffed bear. As she buttoned her own coat, her eyes lingered on the mirror in the hallway. The reflection was someone she barely recognized. A woman who'd lived quietly, carefully, with no drama, and now stood on the edge of something enormous. Helen opened a drawer and took out the birth certificate, folded it once, slid it into her purse. The name on it had shaken her to her core, not because it was wrong, but because it was right in a way no one would understand. She took Lily's hand. The girl looked up at her with trust so pure, it ached. And together, they stepped out into the rain, toward the airport, toward the unknown, and toward the truth waiting at Gate 17. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. No name, no return address, just Helen's name, handwritten in a way that felt strangely familiar, and a postage stamp half smudged by rain. She had almost thrown it away, junk mail, she assumed. But something made her pause. Maybe it was the slant of the writing. Maybe it was the date. March 12th, her birthday. Or maybe it was just that quiet ache she'd carried for 52 years. The ache of wondering. She opened it in the kitchen. The letter inside was a single sheet of lined paper, creased in half, the ink a little faded as if written in haste. "Dear Helen, I know who you are. I've always known. I don't expect anything from you, not even a reply, but I'm writing because I have no one else. Her name is Lily. She's 4. She needs safety. She needs someone kind. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I just hope you still believe in second chances. Emily." At first, Helen thought it was some mistake. A scam, maybe. But then she saw the photograph tucked behind the letter. It was a candid shot. A young woman, exhausted and pale, holding a sleepy child in her arms. Her eyes, those were Helen's eyes. Same shape, same quiet sadness. And the child. She had the tiniest dimple on her left cheek, just like the baby Helen had kissed goodbye on a rainy September morning in 1972. Helen had spent decades wondering what became of her. The little girl she never named. The baby the nuns had taken from her arms at St. Cecilia's home for unwed mothers. She was told not to ask questions, told to move on, told it was better this way. But she never forgot. And now, after all those years, a letter. She read it 10 times, then 20. She sat at the kitchen table with the letter pressed to her chest, her breath coming shallow like she'd run a mile without moving. For the next 2 weeks, she waited for another letter, a follow-up, a phone call, something, but there was nothing. Until a knock came at the door one morning. When she opened it, there stood Emily. She looked older than her 40-something years, weathered, tired. Her clothes didn't match. She held the child's hand like it was the only thing keeping her upright. No hug, no words at first, just eye contact. Long, difficult, real. "I can't keep her safe anymore," Emily whispered, "and I don't want her to end up where I did." Helen blinked back tears. "Where are you going?" Emily shook her head. "Someplace far, somewhere she shouldn't be." And with that, she turned, walked away without another word. Helen called after her once, twice, but Emily didn't turn back. Just like that, Lily was hers, and with her came the folded birth certificate Emily had placed gently on the table before leaving. Helen hadn't looked at it right away, not until Lily was asleep in the guest room, curled into a ball like a kitten. When she finally opened the paper, her hands trembled. The room seemed to tilt. There, under Mother's name, was written, Helen Marie Lockwood. She stared at it for a long time. At first, she thought Emily had made a mistake, but then she saw the signature at the bottom. Emily's own handwriting, signed in a careful loop. Helen Lockwood, listed not as grandmother, but as mother. Helen pressed the paper to her lips and closed her eyes. Suddenly, everything made sense, and nothing made sense at all. The airport smelled like brewed coffee, jet fuel, and rain-soaked carpet. Helen walked slowly through the terminal, Lily's small hand wrapped tightly in hers. The little girl skipped beside her, fascinated by the moving walkways and blinking departure screens. But Helen was somewhere else. The moment she stepped through those sliding glass doors earlier that morning, a strange sense of déjà vu washed over her. The clatter of suitcase wheels, the murmur of announcements, the faint scent of cinnamon rolls from a food court kiosk, each one a thread pulling her backward through time. She had last stood in an airport 36 years ago, not as a passenger, as a witness. She'd watched from afar as her husband left for a business trip that turned into a departure from their marriage. He never came back, not really. After the divorce, she'd buried her dreams of family travel, vacations, reunions. Airports became places she avoided, too full of goodbyes. But today was different. She looked down at Lily, who was humming softly to herself, unaware of the storm stirring behind her grandmother's eyes. A group of teenagers brushed past them. One of them laughed loudly, reminding Helen of a voice from long ago. A nurse's voice, perhaps. Or a nun's. She couldn't remember now. Just that someone had told her she'd get over it. That she'd be grateful one day. That her baby would be better off without her. But that wasn't true. She'd never gotten over it. She'd never stopped wondering what her daughter looked like, sounded like, became. And now that daughter had walked back into her life, only to hand over a child and vanish again. Without explanation, without closure. They reached a quiet corner near Gate 17. Helen sat down beside a tall window overlooking the rainy tarmac. A plane taxied slowly, mist curling from its wings. She stared at it, her mind drifting to the day she gave birth. It was a small hospital run by nuns. The walls were pale green, the lighting sterile. She wasn't allowed to hold the baby for more than a few minutes. She remembered cradling that tiny body, feeling the weight of her own heart cracking open. They told her to name the child. She had whispered one. Emily. No one wrote it down. No one cared. But she remembered. Always. Now here she was, sitting in an airport decades later, holding the hand of a little girl named Lily, Emily's child, whose favorite snack was apple slices, and who liked to draw houses with hearts over the roof. "Nana," Lily said, breaking Helen's reverie. "Do you think clouds taste like marshmallows?" Helen smiled faintly. "I hope so." Across from them, a woman stared, not rudely, but curiously. Maybe she saw the resemblance. Maybe she simply noticed the age gap. Helen adjusted Lily's coat and lowered her voice. "Soon we'll be in a place with red trees and big skies. You'll like it. It's quiet there." Lily nodded, then looked toward the window. "Will Mommy come too?" The question hung in the air like fog. Helen hesitated, then answered softly, "Maybe not now, but someday I hope she will." From the speakers above, the first boarding call for their flight crackled through the terminal. Helen's chest tightened. This was it. The point of no return. She reached into her purse and touched the folded birth certificate again. It felt heavier now, like a key to something sacred or forbidden. She took a deep breath, stood, and offered Lily her hand once more. They walked slowly toward the gate. Helen didn't notice the figure in the distance yet. A woman with a scarf pulled tight around her face, eyes scanning the crowd like someone searching for more than just a flight. But soon, very soon, she would. At first, Helen didn't recognize her. She was just a silhouette across the terminal, standing near the Hudson News kiosk, half hidden behind a rack of neck pillows and glossy magazines. A scarf wrapped around her head, sunglasses despite the gray morning light, arms crossed tightly like a woman trying not to come undone. But Helen felt it before she saw it. That flicker, that cold warmth, that primal thread that still connected them across all the years, pain and silence. Emily. She didn't approach, not right away. She stood still, watching them. Watching Lily. Her posture wasn't tense, but it wasn't calm either. It was the posture of someone torn in two. Helen's heart stuttered. She squeezed Lily's hand and guided her gently to a nearby bench, pretending to rummage through her purse. But her eyes kept flicking up, toward the woman in the scarf. Could she really be here? Helen had imagined a dozen possible outcomes to this day. None of them included Emily showing up again, especially not here, in public, unannounced. Finally, Emily stepped forward. The scarf slipped slightly as she walked, revealing dark hair hastily pulled back. Her skin looked pale, her eyes sunken. But Helen could still see the young girl behind the shadows, the same face she'd held in her mind for decades. "Mom?" Emily said, her voice low and raw, like a match just struck. Helen stood slowly. The word hit her like a wave. They stared at each other, mother and daughter, strangers, mirrors. Lily stood between them, clutching her bear, wide-eyed and silent. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Emily said. Helen searched her daughter's face, trying to read the cracks between words. "I wasn't sure you'd let me." Emily glanced around, nervous. "I couldn't stay, but I needed to see you. One last time." "One last time?" Helen's voice trembled. "Emily, what's going on?" She lowered her head, shame washing over her like rain. "I got mixed up with someone dangerous. He's not going to stop looking for me, or for her. That's why I had to leave her with you." Helen's breath caught. Emily looked up. "I changed her birth certificate. I listed you as her mother. It's not legal, I know, but it's safer this way. If she's with her mother, no one asks questions. No one connects her to me." Helen staggered back slightly. "You forged it?" Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, and I'm sorry, but I had no choice." Lily looked up at both of them, confused but quiet. Helen felt her world spinning. This wasn't the reunion she'd longed for. It was more complicated, more dangerous, more real. "I'm being followed," Emily whispered. "I have to disappear, but I couldn't take her with me. I couldn't risk her." Helen's eyes filled. "You could have told me. I didn't want to drag you into it. But then I remembered. You once saved me by letting me go. Now I'm asking you to save her. By keeping her." The words landed heavy, like iron on Helen's chest. "You're her mother now, Mom," Emily whispered. "At least on paper. And maybe, if life is kinder this time, in heart." Helen wanted to reach for her, to hold her. But Emily stepped back. "They're boarding soon," she said. "You have to go." Helen choked on a dozen things she needed to say, but only one made it out. "Will I ever see you again?" Emily hesitated, then touched Lily's cheek gently. "Take care of her. She's all the good I have left." And with that, she turned, disappearing into the crowd before Helen could stop her. Lily looked up. "Who was that lady?" Helen knelt beside her, brushing a curl behind her ear. "Someone who loves you very much," she whispered. Over the loudspeaker, Final boarding call for Flight 87 to Vermont, departing from Gate 17. Helen stood. The forged birth certificate burned in her purse. Her daughter was gone. But in her arms, her granddaughter, her second chance, her reason, and ahead, a gate that could lead to a whole new life. Helen didn't go straight to the gate. Her feet carried her almost instinctively toward the women's restroom near Concourse B, a quieter one, tucked behind a bakery where the smell of cinnamon rolls masked the sterile scent of tile and cleaner. Inside, the lighting was harsh, the mirror unflattering. Helen lifted Lily onto the counter and handed her a small pack of crackers. "You sit right here, sweetheart. Nana just needs a moment." Lily nodded, swinging her legs as she munched. Her trust was effortless, immediate, and it broke Helen's heart just a little more. She stepped into the last stall, locked the door, and finally let herself break. The tears came hard and hot, silent at first, then shaking. She pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from sobbing too loud. The pain was too layered for words. The shock of seeing Emily, the fear in her voice, the truth about the forged document, the weight of Lily's future now placed squarely on Helen's trembling shoulders. She pulled the birth certificate from her purse and stared at it under the buzzing fluorescent light. Her name was printed so neatly under Mother. A lie, a shield, a desperate prayer. Could she really pull this off? She was 72. A widow, a retired librarian with arthritis in both knees and a freezer full of casseroles for one. What did she know about raising a child in this world? And yet, when Lily looked at her, she didn't see a lie. She saw safety. She saw love. The stall door creaked slightly as Helen leaned against it. And then, behind the thin walls of the bathroom, she heard something that made her blood go cold. A voice, male, sharp, asking questions. She had a kid with her, blonde, about 4. The woman was older, gray hair. They were headed toward Gate 17. "You sure you didn't see them?" Helen froze. There was no response, just the sound of footsteps, pacing, fading. Then the creak of the bathroom door opening. Heavy boots on tile. The man had entered. Helen gripped her purse tightly and prayed. Through the stall door, she saw black shoes, stopping near the sinks, then slowly walking past each stall, one by one, pausing, listening. Her breath hitched. She clutched the paper tighter. And then, the stall door next to hers opened. Silence. Helen's heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Then, a flush, water running, and finally, the door opened again. The footsteps faded. Helen waited. 30 seconds, then a full minute, she peeked under the door. Empty. She exhaled. Her knees nearly buckled. She returned the paper to her bag, splashed cold water on her face, and rejoined Lily, who was still swinging her feet, unaware of how close danger had come. "Ready to go, Nana?" the girl chirped. Helen nodded, forcing a smile. "Yes, baby, let's go." They left the restroom together, Helen's hand never leaving the strap of her purse. As they approached Gate 17 again, Helen scanned the crowd with new eyes. The danger wasn't gone, but time was running out. The final boarding call had already echoed once, and there, at the gate, stood a TSA agent, tall, unsmiling, arms crossed. "Ma'am," he said, eyeing Lily, "can I see your boarding passes again?" Helen's fingers tightened around the birth certificate inside her purse. It was time to either tell the truth or make the world believe a lie. Final boarding call for Flight 87 to Burlington, Vermont. All remaining passengers must proceed to Gate 17 immediately. The overhead voice seemed to echo louder this time, like it was aimed directly at Helen's heart. She stood at the gate, gripping Lily's hand, the child now quiet and watching her with solemn eyes, sensing the shift. Helen could feel the stares, other passengers, gate agents, a security guard posted by the corner pretending not to watch her too closely. And in front of her stood the TSA agent, mid-40s, crew cut, eyes trained. His badge said Turner. "Ma'am," he repeated, "your boarding passes and any documentation proving you're this child's guardian." Helen's pulse pounded in her ears. She handed over the tickets. Then, with a shaky breath, reached into her purse and pulled out the folded birth certificate. She felt as if she were handing over her entire soul. Turner opened it. The silence grew thick as he read. His brow furrowed and his eyes scanned the names. Helen held her breath. She glanced behind him toward the jet bridge, the yawning tunnel to safety and to the life she never thought she'd be living, just steps away. But with every second Turner spent reading that paper, it felt farther and farther out of reach. He looked up. "This is unusual." Helen nodded slowly. "I know. You're listed as the mother." "Yes, but she's 4?" Helen looked him dead in the eye. "Yes." Turner didn't blink. He studied her. Not just the paper, her hands, her eyes, her posture. Then he looked at Lily. "What's your name, sweetie?" The girl answered softly, "Lily." "And who's this?" he asked, pointing to Helen. "Nana," she said. Then paused. "She's my mommy now." Helen felt something twist inside her, both pain and awe. Turner's face didn't change. He looked back at the certificate. "You do realize this raises a few questions," he said carefully. "I'm sure it does," Helen replied. "But if I try to explain, it might put her in danger. I'm not asking you to understand, just to believe that I'm doing what's right." Turner stared at her for a long moment. A beat passed, then another. Behind him, the flight attendant picked up the mic again. "We are now closing the doors for Flight 87. Final passenger, please approach." Turner turned to look at the gate. Then, without a word, he handed the papers back. "Travel safe," he said. Helen's knees nearly buckled. She nodded, her lips tight with emotion. "Thank you." She took Lily's hand and hurried down the jet bridge, the sound of the gate door closing behind her like a seal on a promise. Inside the plane, the air was cooler, hushed. Passengers were already settled in. She found their seats, 15A and 15B, window and middle. She lifted Lily into the seat, fastened her belt, and sat down beside her, the birth certificate still warm in her hand. As the plane pulled away from the gate, Helen looked out the window. The terminal shrank behind them. And somewhere in that crowd, she knew Emily was still watching. Helen didn't wave, but she whispered, "I've got her." And for the first time in decades, she felt like she'd done something truly right. The plane hadn't even reached the runway when the tension cracked again. A voice buzzed over the intercom, tense, uncertain. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been asked to momentarily pause on the tarmac due to a security concern. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." Helen's chest tightened. Her eyes shot to the window. The engine still hummed, the ground crew moving normally outside. But inside, a different kind of current ran through the cabin. Passengers stirred. A baby started crying 2 rows up. Lily leaned into Helen's side, yawning. A flight attendant passed swiftly, whispering something to the head attendant in the galley. Helen's throat went dry. Then, a movement near the front of the plane. A uniformed TSA officer stepped into the cabin. Not Turner. A younger man, dark jacket, calm but with purpose. He scanned the rows, eyes locking on 15B. Helen. She gripped the armrest. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "I need you to come with me." People stared now. A couple in row 14 shifted uncomfortably. A man across the aisle muttered, "What's going on?" Helen stood slowly, heart pounding. "Can I take the child with me?" The officer nodded. Please bring your personal belongings. Lily blinked sleepily. Are we getting off the plane? No, baby, Helen said gently. Just a little walk. We'll be right back. They moved down the aisle under 100 silent eyes, Helen's pulse echoing in her ears. Back at the gate, Turner was waiting. His jaw was tight, his gaze unreadable. Helen stepped forward. Is there a problem? He motioned to a woman standing beside him. Blonde, early 30s, sharp eyes, a badge clipped to her belt. DHS, Department of Homeland Security. She spoke, calm but firm. Mrs. Lockwood, we received an anonymous call about a potential child abduction. Someone claimed the child you're traveling with isn't legally yours. Helen felt her world tilt again. What? I'm not accusing you, the agent added quickly, but we're required to follow protocol. We need to verify the authenticity of this birth certificate. Helen opened her purse, hands trembling, and handed over the paper. The agent studied it, then looked at Helen. Did you know this document was filed only 3 weeks ago? Helen nodded slowly. Yes, and that it lists you as the biological mother? Yes. She hesitated. May I ask, who made the call? The agent didn't answer. Instead, she looked down at Lily, who clutched Helen's coat tightly. Sweetheart, she said gently, can I ask you a question? Where's your mommy? Lily looked up, then without hesitation pointed to Helen. She's right here. The agent glanced at Turner, then back at the certificate. I need to make a phone call, she said. Please stay here. Helen knelt beside Lily. Are you okay? Lily nodded. I don't like the mean man's shoes. Helen almost laughed, but didn't. She couldn't. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The agent returned. Her face had changed, softer, still official but no longer suspicious. She handed the certificate back. Everything checks out. Helen's mouth parted. It does. Let's just say, someone with enough clearance verified the document's origin, and they're not asking us to delay this flight any longer. Turner stepped forward. You're cleared to reboard. Helen stared at both of them, then whispered, Thank you. No, the agent said. Thank you for not giving up on her. They watched as Helen took Lily's hand again and walked back toward the gate. This time, no one stopped her. And this time, she didn't look back. Back in her seat, Helen held Lily close as the plane finally lifted off. The cabin trembled briefly with the thrust, then settled into a gentle hum. The sky outside was gray, but Helen could see faint streaks of blue trying to break through. She'd made it. For now. Lily had fallen asleep with her head on Helen's lap, her small hand gripping two of Helen's fingers tightly. The warmth of that touch was like a thread stitching together every broken part of Helen's heart. Then came the voice. Not from the intercom this time, but from across the aisle. I'm sorry. I couldn't help but overhear earlier, said a woman in seat 15C. Helen looked up, startled. The woman was in her 60s, with short auburn hair and soft, watery eyes. She was clutching a cross pendant in one hand, her carry-on tucked neatly under her feet. I recognized your name, the woman said. Helen blinked. Excuse me? Your name, the woman repeated, voice trembling now. Helen Lockwood. I knew someone with that name once, a long time ago. Helen sat up a little straighter, a strange feeling creeping up her spine. Where? St. Cecilia's, the woman whispered. The home for unwed mothers. 1972. The air between them thickened instantly. The hum of the plane seemed to fall away. I was there too, the woman continued, her voice cracking. I remember you. You were quiet, kind. You gave birth a few weeks after I did. They took our babies away. Mine was a boy. Helen couldn't speak. The woman reached into her purse and pulled out a photo, slightly worn at the edges. A boy in his 30s, smiling, wearing a military uniform. I found mine. Years later, she said. He's a father now, but I never forgot the others, especially you. Helen felt something shift inside her. All those years of silence, of shame, of wondering, and now here in seat 15C, a piece of her past returned to bear witness to her truth. She swallowed hard. They told me to forget. They told all of us that, the woman said. But some things, God doesn't let us forget. Not forever. Helen turned her gaze to Lily, still sleeping peacefully. She stroked the girl's hair and whispered, "Her name is Lily. She's Emily's daughter." The woman gasped, "Emily? Your baby?" Helen nodded, tears forming in her eyes. The woman covered her mouth with her hand, then reached across the aisle and gently placed her fingers over Helen's. "You brought her home," she said softly. "After all these years, you brought her home." The words landed like thunder in Helen's soul. Yes, she had. The flight was quiet now, cruising above the clouds in a soft cradle of sky. Helen watched the world stretch endlessly beneath them, miles of blue and white, soft and silent, like forgiveness made visible. Lily stirred, her small voice muffled by sleep. "Are we flying, Nana?" "Yes, sweetheart," Helen whispered. "We're flying." The seat beside her was empty now. The woman from 15C had moved back to speak privately with a flight attendant, but not before pressing a folded note into Helen's palm. "You were never alone," it said, "and you're not alone now." Helen slipped it into her purse beside the birth certificate. Both pieces of paper, one official, one emotional, now held equal weight in her life. She looked down at Lily, her granddaughter, and saw something miraculous. Not just the face of a child, but a bridge between generations. A living echo of the daughter she lost and the love she thought would never return. And in that moment, Helen knew. She wasn't just escaping danger. She was reclaiming purpose. The plane began its descent into Vermont, the land of red trees, quiet towns, and second chances. Helen imagined them walking through a local farmer's market, baking apple pies, reading bedtime stories beneath quilts stitched from her mother's hands. This would not be easy. There would be paperwork, questions, challenges. She would have to explain things she could barely articulate even to herself. But she would face all of it, with Lily at her side. As they landed, Lily looked out the window and gasped, "It looks like a painting." Helen smiled, wiping her tears. "Yes, it does." They stepped off the plane into crisp, cool air that smelled of pine and soil and the start of something new. Waiting by the baggage claim was a woman with kind eyes holding a sign that read, "Helen Lockwood," a social worker. Arranged quietly through a contact Emily had mentioned. No questions asked, just a handshake and a key to a rented cottage, a safe place to begin again. As they drove through winding back roads, Helen watched the trees blur by, red and gold and orange. The world had changed, but not as much as she had. That night, as Lily fell asleep in a warm bed under a patchwork quilt, Helen sat alone by the window, sipping tea. She opened her phone, an old flip model, not smart, just functional, and typed out a message. "I kept my promise. She's safe. Whenever you're ready, come home." "Mom," she hit send. No reply, not yet. But the message was out there, and for now, that was enough. Have you ever carried a secret for decades, or reunited with someone you thought was lost forever? Tell us your story in the comments below. Your words might help someone else find healing too. If this story moved you, please consider clicking the Super Thanks button. It's a way to support the channel and help us continue sharing stories that touch hearts. Don't forget to subscribe, tap the bell so you never miss an episode, and watch the next story waiting for you right here on screen. Because every goodbye at an airport might just be the start of a new beginning.